We kick off with some good news. No fatality owing to COVID-19 recorded in the country Friday. This even as 241 individuals tested positive from 4,520 samples tested, bringing the total tally of cases in the country to 33,630. Good evening. Welcome to Channel 1 Weekend. Let's take a look at the highlights.
I'm also glad today to inform you that we have no reported deaths.
No deaths recorded on Friday as 241 test positive amid guarded optimism that the country's COVID-19 curve is flattening. Who will be the last one standing? Suspended KEMSA CEO John Manjari turns the heat on officials at the Health Ministry over 7 billion shilling scandal. Punitive bail terms for former Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director Daniel Manduku in the 923 million shillings fraud case. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is Jacky, Wambiru. Our sign language interpreter is Simon Karutha. Remember, you can interact with us on our social media handle on Twitter at KBC Channel 1 or on our Facebook at KBC Channel 1. Now, to kick us off, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i says chiefs and their assistants will be frontliners in the next phase of flattening the COVID-19 curve as well as curbing gender-based violence during the pandemic. Matiang'i says the Interior Ministry and that of Health are working closely to disburse information to the grassroots in ensuring containment measures meant to curb COVID-19 disease are adhered to.
With the new COVID-19 infections appearing to have slowed down in recent days, the government has sustained efforts to have the citizenry adhere to the containment measures aimed at containing the spread of the contagion. And as the government seeks to bend the curve, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i says chiefs and their assistants will be in the front line in the next phase.
The war against corona is very, very far from done. And even if actually we were to flatten the curve tomorrow, we have a hell lot of work that we need to do, especially putting our communities together, re-engineering social relationships, and working better to ensure that we keep our populations not just safe, but we avoid some of the experiences that we have had in the course of the COVID pandemic.
Speaking in Nyeri County, Matiang'i said incidents of violence against women and children has declined, noting that the government will not relent in bringing to book those behind the vices. Matiang'i saying that a framework of working with faith-based organizations has already been established in an effort to flatten the curve.
We're asking chiefs and assistant chiefs, and I'm really, really grateful. I can tell you, CS Kawe has made a very passionate, address to these people and told them how their contact with the population is very important for the next phase of the war that we are dealing with. And we'll take this message either ourselves directly or some of our officials, the PSS, the directors in our ministries, so that we continue to build these grassroots capacities.
Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, who was also present, hailed chiefs and their assistants for playing a critical role in the implementation of protocols and guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health, in effect, easing the COVID burden.
And we want to urge the administration to be part of that process of ensuring that our streets, of ensuring that our homes, our offices, and every place we work continue to be clean, because we have noticed the results, and we have noticed some of the benefits that we have gotten from the COVID-19 measures include reduced disease burdens because of the level of cleanliness.
Kagwe noting that COVID-19 infections are growing across rural counties, urging chiefs and their assistants to be on the front line in curbing the spread of the contagion. Beatrice Gatonyingetich, Channel 1 News.
Now, on a separate matter, the country on Friday recorded no fatality resulting from the COVID-19 disease for the first time in weeks. 241 positive cases were confirmed on Friday from 4,520 samples tested, pushing the number of cases in the country to 33,630. This amid calls for Kenyans to embrace a healthy diet, which is key in boosting immunity, especially during this pandemic.
For weeks now, the country has been recording fatalities resulting from COVID-19 disease as the number of infections continued to rise. However, on Friday, Health Chief Administrative Secretary Dr. Rashid Aman announced that the country had not recorded any new death over the last 24 hours.
I'm also glad today to inform you that we have no reported deaths, and our fatality still stands at 567.
The announcement coming at a time when the infection curve appears to have been flattening, with health officials targeting a positivity rate of 5%, which needs to be maintained for a period of 14 days.
We are making progress, but we need to maintain these measures so that we can see us hitting the magical 5% positivity rate. And we believe, and my appeal to Kenyans is that it has been a long walk, but we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's hold hands together, and eventually we shall prevail.
The number of positive cases now stands at 33,630 after 241 cases were confirmed from 4,520 samples tested. Additionally, 66 patients were discharged after making full recovery, out of which 40 were from the home care program and 26 from the various health facilities. The total number of recoveries now stands at 19,434.
Good nutrition is necessary in the care of people infected with COVID-19, as it contributes to enhanced immunity and generally better health outcomes.
In terms of distribution of the cases, Nairobi County had 113 cases, Mombasa 14, Taita Taveta and Kiambu recorded 10 cases each, Kirinyaga and Narok 9 each, Kajiado 8, while Laikipia and Nakuru each had 7 cases. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
On matters Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha says the school calendar will be informed by the prevailing COVID-19 status in the country. Professor Magoha urging parents to be prepared for any eventuality as the proposed reopening date could be reviewed. Country awaits on the government to give a clear roadmap on the reopening of learning institutions. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has reiterated that school reopening will be determined by the COVID-19 situation in the country.
If His Excellency the President, in his wisdom, has said that in 3 weeks, I am glad that he was magnanimous enough to say 3 weeks, because then, as a doctor, I am now able to look at the curve. What is going to happen during those 3 weeks? Then you'll ask me, why am I here? Because I want to assume that we can open earlier if it is possible.
Professor Magoha calling on parents and guardians to make necessary preparations as school may reopen anytime moving forward. Speaking while assessing the level of preparedness at the Water Technical Training College in Makueni County, Professor Magoha said the government could consider revising the school calendar if the coronavirus curve bends.
But don't go and print your own things, because you see, you twist and then you say, I've said now we shall open early. I have not said so. I have said we are observing the curve, and we are supposed to observe the curve for at least 2 weeks when it hits 5. Do you get the point? And I'm hoping that by the time 3 weeks comes, that will have happened, so that we can sit down and make hard decisions together.
The Cabinet Secretary, however, took issue with some of the technical and vocational training institutions that he accused of failing to utilize available skills to help them conform to the protocols issued by the Ministry of Health. At the same time, Magoha warned those who have won tenders to supply equipment in learning institutions against inflating the costs.
This money is not meant to be stolen by people who are supposed to be creating the desks. The money is meant for 2 purposes: to make desks so that as we move towards the CBC, our children have enough desks; to engage the youth across the whole nation so that they also earn money and stimulate the economy.
Investigations into alleged 7 billion shillings fraud at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority took a new twist Friday, with suspended Chief Executive Officer John Manjari throwing the blame on the Health Ministry, which he says was instrumental in determining who delivered medical supplies. Appearing before Senate Ad Hoc Committee, the suspended CEO told the committee that the authority received directives on more than one occasion from unnamed persons based at Afia House, advising them on where to procure COVID-19 equipment. Let's take a look.
As investigations into the alleged fraudulent procurement of medical supplies by KEMSA, fresh allegations into the scandal took a different trajectory, with the suspended KEMSA CEO John Manjari telling the Joint Senate Ad Hoc Committee that the agency lacked objectivity in procuring COVID-19 equipment, as the decisions were guided by advice from the Afia House.
There's a pandemic. No one in your pre-qualified can be able to supply you with the goods. You then did not choose to talk to the Ministry of Health or any other body, the Council of Governors, until recently, when the KEMSA Act was amended, had their suppliers who were supplying them with goods. You chose not to talk to them as required by the Act. You proceeded and just allowed some very innovative businessmen to supply with that KN95, which was not anywhere. Is that not what you're saying?
No.
Well, then what exactly are you saying if you ignored Section 56(2) of the Act?
Susan Mochache.
Yes.
There were requests from the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable...
Written or by phone call?
Either phone calls, most of them SMSs and phone calls.
Yes.
We did have from the National Emergency Response.
Which CS? It's good you give us names for the record.
We've said the Honorable Mutai Kagwe.
Yes.
And we also got the emergency response team that was handling COVID.
Who specifically?
There was an engineer, there was a brigadier, somebody, I can't remember his name, who was heading that section.
Okay.
I remember at one stage they came direct to KEMSA.
Yes.
And they wanted specific items which we didn't have. And we were told, we need to respond to that aspect. And if we are not able to, to respond in that warehouse, they'll come and take it over.
And I recall that the ministry, for instance, asked us on the phone, followed by instructions, or by instructions to procure 120 beds for Bagadi Hospital, because it was going to be declared an isolation center. We had no budget at that moment for 120 beds to be taken to Bagadi. But we had to make the beds available because there was a pandemic.
Senators putting the board chair into the spotlight as to why the board failed to account for the entire 7 billion shillings kitty, only choosing to account for 4.6 billion shillings, a figure that left out donor funds.
It will be the use of the board for this company while Kenya is losing money and building billionaires. Chair.
You guys do not live en masse. The ministry could request for a board meeting, emergency board meeting, and you could discuss all those issues. But those things were not done. So let's forget all the other issues. Things were not done proper, Chairman.
Do you authorize, as a board, did you authorize the CEO to commit KEMSA on this COVID purchases?
No.
You did not authorize
No, we did not.
The CEO?
We did not.
KEMSA was subsequently required to explain why top officials ignored advice, requiring them not to order after their budget was exhausted.
How long were you supposed to continue committing the authority? Because we have letters here which tell us that the Director of Procurement repeatedly requested you to stop issuing the letters. First one was on April, then May, second on May, a third one in June, and you continued issuing the commitment letters at the same price as the earlier letters. So was there somewhere where the board failed to oversight or something? Maybe you can explain that.
The committee has now directed KEMSA to provide documents on the status of the authority's relationship with foreign donors that it says have threatened to withdraw their support, as well as proof of 6.2 billion shillings of stock it claims is in its warehouse. For Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
On a separate matter, the Orange Democratic Movement Party says it will not defend any member who will be found culpable of corruption dealings. According to ODM Party Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and Nairobi County Chair George Aladwa, the party will not defend any of its members found to have participated in malpractices at Afia House. Today's position by Raila Odinga's led party comes barely a week after ODM dismissed claims of corruption in procurement of COVID-19 kits at the Health Ministry.
Barely a week after ODM party bigwigs dismissed claims of theft of taxpayers' money at Afia House as baseless and sensational, the same leadership appears to have retracted its position, now distancing itself from any of its members who might be found culpable. ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and Nairobi County Party's Chairman George Aladwa now want thorough investigations undertaken to unearth graft at the Health Ministry.
Sisi hatuungi mkono wale watu ambao wanapatikana kwa mambo ya corruption katika nchi hii. Sisi tumesema kila mtu abebe mzigo wake, kama upatikana na kashfa, mwenyewe ubebe mzigo wako, chama haitakusaidia. Sisi tunasema kwamba tumejitoa kwa hayo mambo ambayo wale wanalagai wa Kenya pesa zao.
The Orange Party has also welcomed the president's call for Kenyans to embrace the forthcoming constitutional review movement.
Wakenya wanaengoja na kuna wale sisi tunajua kwamba wanapinga, na sisi tunataka kwenda mashinani tuone kwamba tumeanza kuweza sera zetu za BBI ili iweze kufaulu.
The feedback they are giving us from the ground is that people are ready. People are ready to start this process immediately, and which is why they have resolved to ask the President and His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, the party leader, to expedite the release of the report, because according to them, our people are ready.
ODM party leader Raila Odinga avoiding to comment on the matter at a fundraising event for a resource center and library hosted by his wife Mama Ida Odinga. Kevin Washira, Channel 1 News.
Well, that brings us to a fast break here on Channel 1 Weekend. But before we do that, our guest tonight here on our interview segment tonight is Wambiru Gikonyo, who is the National Coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability. We shall be discussing matters regarding county government's resilience in the COVID era. Let's take that break.
Hello? Dude, United on fire. United? Rashford is unstoppable. Tell me you have DSTV, Eddie. Do you know that I get more than 20 live matches on any given week from the best leagues in the world? La Liga, Serie A, the Champions League, the Premier League. Oh, what about that? Do you have Premier League? No, we don't have that. Eddie, if you're going to spend your money, spend it on the best football in the world.
Dial *423# to buy a DSTV HD decoder for only 1,999 shillings.
Get ready for Kenya's greatest concert ever to celebrate our country at this time of crisis and fear. One stage, 30 artists, on Saturday the 29th of August at 8 p.m. at All Saints Cathedral. Kenya Ni Yetu, a concert of hope and victory. Sponsored by Stanbic Bank and supported by the Media Owners Association, because we care for Kenya. The show will be live on yetulive.com, Kiss TV, Citizen TV, K24, NTV, KTN, KBC, Switch TV, Cast TV, and TV47. Supported by Hot 96, Capital FM, Radio 44, Three Stones Media, and Family Media. Remember, it's this Saturday, 29th August at 8 p.m. Join us.
Once beaten, twice shy. As the English Premier League champions Liverpool face off with the FA Cup winners Arsenal in the FA Community Shield.
What an unbelievable strike.
Watch it live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner, as we kickstart the new season.
This weekend,
on KBC Channel 1.
Lauren, is that you?
It's me.
The number of women killed is not 375. The real number is probably closer to 5,000.
5,000.
Some girl escaped.
This girl was attacked, strangled, buried, and left for dead. And she crawled out of her own grave. She wants to find the guys who did this. I will not let anything happen to you. And I will find this man. This is an important story.
Your story is destroy her. And they will kill you.
Speech. We must not, as a people, succumb to the paralysis of constitutional rigidity. We must treat a constitution as a living being, as a living document that must constantly adjust to our emerging realities. In our past, all our constitutions have been what we may call ceasefire documents, agreements created to either dodge confrontation or avoid civil conflict. And indeed, if you do a textual reading of these constitutions, they represent a constant argument between the past and the present. And that is why I call them ceasefire. But 10 years after one of the most progressive constitutions, I believe the moment calls on us to do better. Instead of a ceasefire document that enforces a zero-sum game in which winner takes all and loser is expected to accept, the moment calls us to a new time. The moment calls us to create a constitutional order that will long endure and survive and not be a conflict-stopping constitution, but rather a future-building document. And on this, I want to emphasize to all of us that we must not go down a path of populism today, but let us choose a bold path, a path that will assure each and every Kenyan, regardless of where they come from, their social background, their ethnic background, their religious background, assure every Kenyan of sustained peace, security, and shared economic responsibility.
And welcome back. Let's proceed where Deputy President William Ruto has called on the political class to shun divisive politics and intensify efforts aimed at uniting the country. Speaking at Kongoya in Nyali constituency during the handing over of NHIF cards to 500 elderly persons, the Deputy President said the Jubilee administration remains committed on delivering on its development agenda.
With talk of a constitutional review characterizing the country's political debate, opponents of the proposed amendment will throw the push into political fodder during an event to hand over NHIF cards to about 500 elderly persons in Kongoya Nyali constituency.
Samuel Omondi Oduor. Nakuomba uje mbele pia.
Area Member of Parliament Mohamed Ali and former Mombasa Senator Hassan Sarai dismissing the Building Bridges initiative as a succession strategy by a few selfish leaders.
Mimi nauliza, hii katiba imekukosea wewe mwananchi? Hii katiba imekudhulumu? Eti wanasema wanataka kuunganisha Wakenya. Utaunganisha vipi Wakenya na wewe unabagua watu wengine, unashika watu wengine na unasema unataka kuunganisha Wakenya.
It is our responsibility kama Wakenya to defend the 2010 constitution. There is no BBI that is good for the country. BBI ni mikakati ya succession. Ni mikakati ya succession ambayo yanataka kuleta ukabila ndani ya katiba.
Deputy President William Ruto, who was attending the event, would however keep off from the debate, instead urging the political class to shun divisive politics.
Hatuwezi kukubali Kenya irudishwe nyuma mahali ambapo Wakenya wanagombana, mahali ambapo Wakenya wanalishwa siasa ya ukabila, mahali ambapo mambo yanaendeshwa katika mirengo na migawanyiko. Sisi tumesema tunataka siasa ya kuunganisha Kenya na kulenga mambo ya maendeleo kama yale Mohamed Ali ametuitia hapa leo tuyatekeleze.
Ruto saying the Jubilee administration is on course to deliver on its pre-election mandate, disclosing that the government plans to issue NHIF cards to those aged over 70 years and above to help them access quality health care at no cost.
Tumetoa pesa zingine milioni 200 ya hapa Mombasa County ili tuweze kugharamia mambo ya cash transfer. Kuna wazee, kuna walemavu, kuna mayatima. Na tumesema hawa wote pia inafaa wajumuishwe, kila mwezi wapatiwe pesa kidogo wajimudu, na vile vile wale wa miaka 70 na kwenda mbele walio katika hiyo program tutawapatia pia kadi ya NHIF ili kugharamia mambo yao ya matibabu, na italipwa kikamilifu na serikali ya Kenya.
For Channel 1 News Hour Weekend from Mombasa County, I am Anburu.
And on to the corridors of justice, where former Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director Daniel Manduku and a former officer Juma Fadhili have been released on a 12 million shilling cash bail. The duo denied 5 graft-related charges in the alleged loss of 923 million shillings. This comes as Malindi Court ordered Malindi Member of Parliament Aisha Juma to present herself to the police to answer to graft-related charges on Monday. 6 Development Fund officials in Malindi were charged and released on a 5 million shilling cash bail.
Among the graft allegations leveled against the former Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director Daniel Manduku and the junior officer Juma Fadhili Chilugu are over 923 million shillings that cannot be accounted for from the 1.4 billion shillings contractual sum. The monies are alleged to have been misappropriated in unlawful engagement in the procurement of manufacturing of concrete barriers and unlawfully preparing works evaluation certificates that were erroneously occasioning an overpayment. Appearing before Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi, the two pleaded not guilty to 5 accounts, which include conspiracy to commit an offence of corruption, engaging in a project without prior planning, willful failure to comply with applicable laws and procedures and guidelines relating to procurement, and abuse of office. Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi released the duo on a cash bail of 12 million shillings, an alternative bond of 30 million shillings. They're also required to deposit their passports and travel documents and are banned from accessing any public office.
Mention will be on 25th of September 2020 to confirm that the defense has been served with all the evidential material that the prosecution intends to rely on.
Elsewhere, 6 Malindi constituency CDF officers co-accused alongside Malindi MP Aisha Juma one Friday morning arraigned before Mombasa law courts accused of misappropriating over 57.7 million shillings from the constituency development fund. Appearing before Chief Magistrate Edna Nyeloti, the 6 were charged with 10 counts of graft, among them money laundering and conspiring to receive money falsely, which they denied, and were released on a 5 million shillings cash bill or 10 million bond. Malindi MP Aisha Juma was not in court but was represented by a lawyer, Dunstan Omari. In explaining Juma's absence, he pointed out she learnt about the arrest on social media and had not been duly summoned.
hakuwa kotini leo kwa sababu ambazo ni kwamba yeye hakuarifiwa. Kulingana na sheria za Kenya lazima aarifiwe. Hakuarifiwa.
The magistrate ordered the legislator to present himself to the Port Police before appearing in court on Monday next week.
Kama imetoa warrant, ikalift ile warrant, kwa hivyo Aisha Jumwa atakikana aende kwa polisi, tutamchukua, kisha tukimfikisha pale, atolewe vidole, afanywe ile processing, kisha aletwe kotini Jumatatu.
The lawyers say they'll appeal the ruling on bail and bond on Monday, terming it exorbitant.
Kwa sababu ile dhamana imepeanwa, ni dhamana kama kuwanyima wale walioshtakiwa. Wale ni watu wa chochole, wale ni makabwela, wale ni watu wa chini, wale ni akina Yahe, mshahara yao ni shilingi 10,039 hadi 10,000. Wamwambia leo mtu mwenye anakula mshahara shilingi 10,000 alete milioni 5.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Serafina Robbie.
Well, now we move on to the interview segment whereby on our interview segment on Perspective on Channel 1 Weekend, our guest tonight is none other than Wambiru Gikonyo, who is the National Coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability. Welcome, Wambiru.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Well, now, tell us, this discussion tonight comes ahead of the Council of Governors COVID-19 virtual conference on 31st August, which is dubbed County Government's Resilience in the COVID-19 era. Why is it important to have this conference at this point in time?
Well, I believe what the Council of Governors, in conjunction with the national government, are trying to do is to take stock of where we are in the fight against COVID. And more importantly, if you look at the topic, they're discussing resilience. And resilience is very important. And as one of the participants in the conference, I'm actually very happy that to see COVID has brought the county governments and the national government together. Because you know, around devolution, there's been a lot of contestation, and it's good to see them working together. But there are many questions that need to be addressed, like what is resilience? What has COVID taught us? Because if you look at COVID and the countries that have succeeded, there are certain priorities that need emphasis by both levels of government if we are going to talk about resilience in health, resilience in agriculture, resilience in terms of employment, especially for informal workers who are the majority in this country, resilience in terms of cushioning those who are affected by the restrictions around COVID, because people are out of work, people are not able to apply their normal trade, so households are hungry. You know, people who have savings have eaten up into their savings. Businesses have closed. People have lost their jobs. So this is the reality we are living in. So the conference is important because we need to ensure that the national government and the county governments are paying attention to where COVID needs intervention and not being distracted. As we know, we are having a problem of tenderpreneur-led budgeting, where you have budgeting processes that are aiming at projects that are lining pockets. And with this tension, you might then see budgetary allocations going into unnecessary expenditure instead of going into the COVID response. So it's a welcome conference, and it's a conference that will discuss pertinent issues about the response to COVID, about how to deal with the ravages of COVID, and how to build resilience for the future.
Well, you've mentioned the resilience of counties. Tell us, how do you rate county response as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
That's an interesting question, because it's not possible to rate the county response without looking at the national response. Because a pandemic, by its very nature, is a national threat. And all national threats have to be responded to by the national government. So we need to look at it at these two levels. So how do we rate the COVID response in the country? I would say we are below par. We've done well, or reasonably well in some regards, but we have wide gaping gaps in others. So we are not out of the woods. And we heard C.S. Matiang'i saying it is far from done. In fact, as a country, we are lucky that the level of infectiousness of COVID in Kenya was below that in countries in the West. We saw what happened in Italy, where the transmission rate was extremely high. It hasn't been such here. Having said that, I think the response has been reasonably good in terms of health preparedness at the national level, at the county level. We started on a back foot, but were quickly able to, get to a stage where there was good communication, good attention being paid to what needs to be done in regard to, basic provision, dealing with level of infection. We've had challenges with PPEs, I think, especially at the county level, especially at the lower county level. But, we've seen the health response reasonably good. In terms of what you'd call the social response, of course, we saw the human rights violations. That I don't need to repeat that. That has been a big challenge, especially because it was a sense of government not really being able to communicate to citizens that this is your disease, you have to take responsibility, but also recognizing that citizens act in a particular way because livelihood issues outstrip sometimes the health risks. And so that unbalance was there. So I would say the livelihood side government hasn't really dealt with. And this is where I would then come and say, we have a challenge, because if you look at the scenario right now, the control of budget actually was in the press this week, saying that county governments were supposed to have received 13 billion COVID response in the previous financial year. That money was not released on time, and so counties didn't get this money. You then ask, what are counties preparing with if the money that was specifically for COVID did not get to them? You then also see that we are having a sharing of revenue tug of war. And this tug of war is because there are counties that are going to lose revenue. And you've seen the deliberations were about, we need to increase the amount going to counties in the division of revenue. And they were suggesting it be increased by almost 35 billion. So the reality is that counties are underfunded. And so the response of counties becomes very difficult because as it is, counties have been working with, threadbare budgets, so to speak. Of course, there's also inefficiency and corruption, which is not tolerable. But in very real terms, when you look at the 2020 national budget, if you look at the report prepared by the Parliamentary Budget Office, they say this is not a COVID budget because this budget is assuming that with a little bit of money going towards COVID, very small amounts, the economy will take care of the rest, or Kenyans will take care of the rest to tajisot. Whereas what is recommended is you need a COVID budget that looks at key issues in COVID is the strength of the local level health structures. So you need to put money into local health structures, down to the community health workers. And we've been hearing in the media, community health workers are complaining. They are not being supported. 2,000 shillings a month for a community health worker to do tracking, to do tracing, to do notification, to do sensitization. That money isn't being made available. Making sure the PPEs are there, making sure the reagents, whatever is needed is available at the lower levels. So this hasn't been done. The other thing is community level, local level health, agriculture systems. the food supply chain, all the way from the farm to the retail and wholesale. And you know, between agriculture, retail and wholesale of food, majority of Kenyans are employed in that sector. So we need investments there. So when you look at the 2020 budget, you see they are not putting money here. We need cushions to cushion those who are food insecure. We need cushions to cushion those who are out of jobs, businesses that are going bust, need to get some lifeline. And we see that the government has done a little bit with the economic stimulus, but the economic stimulus is too tokenistic. And government is continuing with what can be deemed as non-essential spending of projects that, if you look at it, some of them are not even economically viable, and even where they are not a priority at this COVID time. So the problem we have actually at the county level really draws from the national level, where government is holding on to resources and putting those resources in non-essential spending at the expense of the COVID response. So this is likely to have an impact in the coming months, and I hope this will be a main discussion in the course of the deliberations on Monday.
Well, now, speaking of monies still, we understand there have been issues around utilization of funds set aside to boost the war against the COVID-19. How are county governments ensuring accountability when it comes to donations?
Well, accountability is across the board, and a majority of the COVID spending anyway is being done through the national government. But yes, the problem, of course, of accountability is one that COVID cannot solve. So you will find counties, there are counties that have very good auditor budget reports, very good controller budget reports, because they have strong systems, they have accountable leadership, and you will find those counties will utilize their COVID expenditures well. There are those counties that are in the bad books, governors who are presently charged with crimes, financial and economic crimes, corruption, theft. You can expect that those counties will misuse COVID funds. And so I would say that what we as civil society proposed to the ministry is that we need to strengthen the social accountability around COVID funds. We need to set up vigilance structures. Number one, we need transparency. How much money? Where is the money going? Who is the money going to? Access to the procurement information, details on expenditure priorities, but this is not happening. So the problem we have is not just at county level, but from the national level, the issue of transparency, government is not listening, they are not responding. Ironically, we have access to information law, we have passed that. We are signatories to the open governance program that promotes open contracting, disclosure of the beneficiaries of contracts. For instance, we saw recently the preferential procurement is going to, political allies and family that, of very high-ranking officials in office, right to the very top, at the expense of genuine contractors. Now, this issue of corruption in procurement is really enabled by lack of transparency. And so we need the Ministry of Finance guidelines, and we had asked for this and they didn't put it in, to robustly and proactively disclose information and make it actionable when this information isn't disclosed. But now, if the very top is not disclosing, then at the county level, we hope the counties can still disclose proactively. And it's part of the agenda we'll continue to push. But we must recognize that we are getting a very bad example from the national level. We need, the recent very embarrassing events of loss of funds demonstrate the need for transparency, for accountability, and for those institutions that are found to have misused money, to then be denied further spending. We also have a habit in this country where you'll find institutions, it could be counties, it could be especially parastatals and these government-owned agencies have misused money in one financial year. The next financial year, they get even more money. And this is a lapse by Parliament and the county assemblies. So yes, I agree, we have a big gaping hole in terms of accountability.
Allow me
this
to
needs
interrupt
be paid
you.
attention.
Well, so you understand that governors want a role in sourcing of drugs to their jurisdiction. Now, is it a legitimate appeal? Is there jurisdiction for this?
Right. This is the KEMSA story that, you know, has unraveled, has come out in a... There's a principle. Number one, health is a devolved function. There's a principle of subsidiarity, and these are part of the deliberations. There's also the principle of decentralizing authority. Now, KEMSA itself has been saying that it cannot cope with the demand ever since the amendment was tabled last year and then enacted. And so there have been shortages. So whether, you know, the governors are asking or not is not the issue. The issue is we, as members of the public, at a dispensary level, at a county facility level, at a county hospital level, require drugs. And we require the type of drugs when we need them. And KEMSA itself had already said it's not able to cope, let alone cope with COVID. So the solution has to be one that enables efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Now, in principle, centralizing of authority, centralizing of procurement promotes corruption. So I think there's a need to, really decentralize the procurement around drugs and to do it in a manner that promotes efficiency, ensures that quality and standards are upheld.
Well, thank you so much. That was Wambiru Gikonyo. We are, unfortunately, we're out of time. Well, she is the National Coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability. Well, remember, this comes ahead of the Council of Governors COVID-19 virtual conference that is on 31st August, which is dubbed County Government's Resilience in the COVID-19 era. Now, up next is business news. Now, let's talk business, where the James Gishuru Road to Rironi Highway will be completed in December 2021 under a new program developed by the government. The 25-kilometer highway will also be financed through Director Exchequer funding after the World Bank pulled out of the project. Transport and Infrastructure Cabinet Secretary James Macharia has said the contractor China Wuyi has committed to finish the major trunks by the end of next year.
The expansion of the highway that began 3 years ago has been dodged by long delays after the main financier World Bank pulled the plug on funding. By the time funding from the bank dried up, it had committed 1.6 billion shillings into the project. Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia says the government will bankroll the project to the tune of 28 billion shillings.
In terms of the main trunk, the commitment we've been given is that that will be completed by December this year, so that the flow of traffic will be seamless. Then for the other service lanes, which as you have seen are very, very, very important. In total, you have more than 40 kilometers of service lanes.
Despite the funding challenges, the main contractor China Wuyi has been expanding the road with only a commitment to pay later from the government. Macharia says the contractor has further agreed to accelerate construction by bringing in more workers and machinery to ensure the main trunk project is completed in the next 4 months.
If we can have this main trunk open, and you have seen the quality is very good, by December, then thereafter we do the service lanes for another maybe 9 to 12 months. then indeed this will be a major transformative project, not just for this area but for the entire country.
The project also encompasses the upgrading of approximately 19 kilometers of connector roads to paved standards and the demolition of 2 grade-separated junction overpass bridges at Kangemi and Othero. Macharia further says the Thika to Magumu Road project will also be finished 12 months ahead of schedule in the new timeline developed by the government.
The impact will be very massive. It will attract new investment because you can find that investors will be attracted to bring their money here. Even in terms of the agricultural development, in terms of the waste, in terms of businesses around this area, it will be massive.
The schedule will require contractors to raise their staffing and machinery levels to compensate for the lost time due to the coronavirus. The Thika-Magumu Highway is part of the 560 kilometers Mau Mau Road that traverses the counties of Nyeri, Murang'a, Kiambu, Nakuru and Nyandarua.
Now, on a separate matter, the government is finalizing the release of funds meant to compensate remaining persons affected by construction of Thwake Multipurpose Dam. Speaking when he toured the project, National Treasury Principal Secretary Dr. James Muye said the project, which is currently 42% complete, is on course after land succession disputes among landowners were resolved.
Thwake Multipurpose Dam has been cited as a key enabler for the realization of government's Big Four agenda and Vision 2030 blueprint.
Mpango ambao umefanywa hapa ni mpango mzuri sana. Kwa sababu katika hiyo jumla ya watu ambao walikuwa walipwe pesa ya fidia ni watu 25 tu ambao wamebaki.
Speaking during a site visit, National Treasury Principal Secretary Dr. Julius Muye said the government had laid down plans to ensure the contractor China Gezuba Group Corporation acquires remaining land promptly to avoid delays. The contractor has already issued interim payment certificates for various works awaiting part payment, which are currently at the National Treasury for processing.
Kwa sababu sasa tushatenga pesa national government ya kuangalia to make sure that kila mtu ambaye ardhi yake imetumika na hii bawa amelipwa pesa yake.
Timely completion of the project is poised to benefit close to 1.3 million rural inhabitants of Makueni, Kitui and parts of Machakos counties. The first phase, currently on course, involves construction of an 80.5-meter high multi-purpose dam with a 688 million cubic meter storage capacity, as well as an associated prem work needed to enable implementation of the other 3 phases.
Vile walikuwa wamepangilia, walikuwa wanapangilia kumaliza November 2022, lakini vile nimeongea na wao, nimewasii na nikawauliza wanawezaje kufanya mambo mazuri haraka, tuangalie vile tunaweza kumaliza huyu mradi kabla ya kufika hiyo November 2022.
General progress is estimated to be at 41.5% with stipulated time for completion set for November 2022. The project has so far consumed 16 billion shillings out of a total cost of 63 billion shillings. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Kenya Airways financial turbulence is expected to deepen further, with revenue likely to drop by 70% this year. The national carrier has seen its half-year revenue slump 48% to 30.2 billion shillings on the back of COVID-19 pandemic.
Kenya Airways chairman Michael Joseph has said passenger numbers dropped by 55.5% to 1.1 million, in contrast with 2.4 million the same period last year, after the government closed the Kenyan airspace to curb the spread of the coronavirus. The carrier projects demand to remain at less than 50% of 2019 for the rest of the year. Joseph says the government is still keen on plans to rationalize the carrier, and talks are ongoing with the key shareholders, Air France KLM, who controls 7.7% of KQ's shares. KQ chief Alan Kilavuka has told investors that net loss for the 6 months ended June 2020 widened by 67% to 14.4 billion shillings. In the period, total revenues dipped by 48% to 30.2 billion shillings, in line with the fall in passenger numbers. Operating cost declined by 37% to 38.6 billion shillings, majorly driven by the reduced operations for the year. Kilavuka says operating expenses are expected to spike as the carrier implement various expensive measures to comply with the new health protocols issued by the government in July as part of the flight resumption measures. KQ plans to resume United States route in October and currently flies to Europe, Asia and more than 20 routes in its key markets of Africa.
And on Matters Sports, Kakamega Homeboys head coach Nicola Muyoti has challenged former footballers to take up leadership opportunities in football. The former AFC Leopards midfielder is among those seeking elective positions in the upcoming Football Kenya Federation's county elections set for September 19th.
Kenya Federation's Electoral Board late Thursday published the final list of delegates eligible to vote at the county and national levels, a day after concluding its county nomination exercise, with verification of papers submitted kicking off yesterday through to today. With increasing numbers of former footballers seeking leadership positions all over the world, Kakamega Homeboys head coach Nicholas Muyoti has urged former footballers here in Kenya to follow suit as they best understand the needs of footballers. The former Kenyan international, who has expressed interest in the FKF Busia County Branch Secretary position in the upcoming county elections, further reiterated his commitment to supporting youth structures in the region if elected.
I think, first of all, I can say they're doing a splendid job, especially from the time I came in. They've guided me well, I've cooperated, and I believe they've been very patient because up to now, before receiving all my papers, all my documentations, they've been very supportive. The fact that I'm here just tells you that they're going to deliver a free and fair election, because I think I believe in the process, and I believe it's gonna be done well and free and fair.
Muyoti led Homeboys to second position in the 2019-2020 Kenya Premier League season that was cut short by the COVID-19 pandemic, and now believes he has what it takes to lead Busia County if elected. County elections are set to be held on September 19th, while national elections shall be held on October 17th.
FA Cup winners Arsenal will play Premier League champions Liverpool in the Community Shield match tomorrow evening at the Wembley Stadium. The match, which will kick off at 6:30 p.m, will be televised live on KBC Channel 1.
Less than a month after the 2019-2020 Premier League season drew to a close, the curtain raises on a new campaign as Arsenal and Liverpool meet in the Community Shield at Wembley Stadium tomorrow. Liverpool are appearing in this annual fixture for the second successive year following a 2019 penalty shootout defeat by Manchester City, but this time as Premier League champions, having finally ended their 30-year wait for the title. Jurgen Klopp's side have warmed up for the contest with a pre-season training camp in Austria that included friendlies against Stuttgart and RB Salzburg. Like Liverpool, Arsenal are 15-time winners of the Community Shield and are set to appear in the Wembley Showcase for the 24th time. Mikel Arteta's side finished an eventful campaign on a high note by coming from behind to defeat Chelsea 2-1 and secure a 14th FA Cup title, thanks to a brace from captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Arsenal put League One opponents MK Dons to the sword in anticipation for this match in midweek. The match, set to kick off at 6:30 p.m, will be televised live on KBC Channel 1.
Manchester City have rolled out letting first-team regulars Bernardo Silva, Riyad Mahrez and Gabriel Jesus live in any exchange deal for Lionel Messi or anyone else this summer. City remain tight-lipped on stories about their interest in Messi, who told Barcelona he wants to leave the Camp Nou.
Manchester City are not considering a fire sale of players to fund any move for Lionel Messi this summer. Reports in Spain claim the club are ready to include Bernardo Silva, Gabriel Jesus and Riyad Mahrez as part of a player plus cash move for the Barcelona forward. Manchester City have, however, not commented on their interest in Messi. Meanwhile, Brazil's centre-back Thiago Silva has signed for Chelsea on a one-year deal with the option of another. The 35-year-old has joined the Blues on a free transfer, having left PSG after their Champions League final defeat on the 23rd of August. Chelsea begin their Premier League campaign away at Brighton on Monday, 14th September. Elsewhere, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta is confident captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang will sign a new contract. The 31-year-old Gabon striker, who joined the Gunners from Borussia Dortmund in January 2018, has a year remaining on his current contract. Arsenal finished 8th last term but qualified for the Europa League, along with Leicester and Tottenham by virtue of their FA Cup final win against Chelsea. And Spanish goalkeeper Roberto has left West Ham to join Real Valladolid on a free transfer. The 34-year-old had signed a 2-year deal with the Hammers in May 2019 and made his full debut against Newport County in the EFL Cup last August. But errors, including pushing the ball into his own net against Burnley, blighted his time at West Ham, and he only made 10 appearances in total.
Well, that is all we had for you tonight. Well, remember to adhere to government's directive to help curb the spread of coronavirus. My name is Jacky. Wambiru, sign language interpreter this evening was Simon Karutha. I leave you in the good hands of Irene Muchuma with the weather updates. Have a good night.
Thank you, Wambiru, and many thanks to you for your time. A very warm welcome to Channel 1 Weather Update. I hope you're well. My name is Irene Mchuma Odem. Tonight, Kericho County is the coldest. Temperature stand at 10 degrees Celsius. Most parts of the country have been covered with partly cloudy conditions, save for a few areas over the Lake Basin region and western parts of the country where there are scattered wet conditions. Remember, the weather experts told us that as we come towards the close of the month of August, we will start to experience warm conditions. This is a reality. Starting tomorrow, especially during the morning hours, the whole country will experience sunny conditions, save for a few areas over the northwestern parts of the country, and this is along the border of Kenya and South Sudan, where there will be wet conditions over a few places. The capital, Meru and Nyeri, will experience cloudy conditions during the early morning hours. This will later on give way to sunny intervals, but then these are weather conditions that will stretch towards the afternoon. Sunny conditions will also continue at the coastal strip. The northern parts of the country will mainly experience sunny intervals. The Lake Basin region and western parts of the country will experience showers accompanied by thunderstorms, but then this will just be over few places. Temperatures in Lodwar are still up, the highest across the country. We're expecting highs of 36 degrees Celsius. Mandera will experience highs of 35 degrees Celsius. And for us in the capital, we're expecting highs of 25 and lows of 13 degrees Celsius. Up next is the international forecast. Do have a good night and see you tomorrow, God willing.